topics we want to like the intentional hit. What kind of
as in like do you want me to talk as if I'm talking directly as on the recording, or just like for notes for you? Because I can do that.
Well, just
is there the idea is that? Oh, okay.
We're just having a conversation now. I'm trying to pull up the meeting agenda. I'm just all the talking points.
The conversation is done.
Here it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. And see how they potentially connect in terms of our episode.
Here's this.
Yeah, I got
it. Is it recording?
So giving all these right here.
So
what we're going to do next week is talk about which of these topics we want to.
No, I don't.
This is a Taboo Tidbit, a preview of StoryBoard Convention. The very next full episode will feature several of our current podcast contributors sitting down to map out and strategize our subject matter and production schedule for this season. To give you an example of this meta-narrative experience, here's a short preview featuring myself, DJ Dupsy, and my buddy,
DJ AOB.
Under Our Voices is Walking on Broken Glass by Annie Lennox, the instrumental track.
So I'm looking forward in this podcast to talk about all the different components that make us as Black people who we are today. And that includes not only the history of slavery from 1619, when the first ship of Africans were brought to America for indentured servitude, but also talking about the history of trauma, oppression, and depression that comes with all of that post traumatic slave mental state that we come from. And so, talking about, what it meant to be enslaved in terms of like the disposal of our bodies, in terms of the sexual exploitation, and all the other different factors that have, built up the world that we live in today, where we feel as Black people that, that we're still at a disadvantage to some degree. Talking about where that comes from, and also, this feeling, especially as a man, as a Black man, what it means to have masculinity and to also have this identity as Black, and how we can, kind of like circumvent the consistent labeling of aggressive or of over-sexual that is within that Black man, and talk about how we can kind of deconstruct some of these stereotypes of Black men, but also still feel like we have power and still feel like we have that kind of like, pride in ourselves, and how to make that into a healthy thing and empower ourselves. But I think that it comes with, the manipulation of our minds today, and that has to do with social media, that has to do with pop culture, where they envision our roles to be, in all that TV news media, and also how that kind of connects to some of the minstrel shows, and how, Black people sometimes have been filling in this like, role of like, everyone make fun of us, we're here to entertain you, we're here for your enjoyment. We're not the baseline of people's entertainment, but for some reason, pop culture sometimes, makes us out to be that, and definitely in the past, but still happening today. And that also has to do with, it seems like we're the center of entertainment and the center of enjoyment, but also it seems like we're not always getting the most out of the profit from that. It seems like there's been this division between, the rich Black folks and everyone else. And that was intentional, because if you read the actual National Memorandum number 46 created by the United States, it actually says that they recognize that African Americans in America, they want to identify as African, and so they've actually they use the same tactics that they used in white supremacy in the past, which is divide and conquer. So let a few Africans go to Harvard, let a few of them go to Stanford, let a few of them get this job here, let a few of them come out to the table, and
so that way it's just like using them as like the as like a shield to say that, like, oh, like, look, some of you are capable of doing it, I guess. And so therefore setting up this kind of thing of like, where it's like, oh, well, are you gonna, hate on your own people? Like, are you gonna, because, they, because of what they have, like, are you gonna, all that kind of stuff. And so be using it as a way to keep us fighting within each other.
Exactly.
Rather than seeing the broader kind of systemic factors, right?
Yeah.
That made this, right, to the whole point of like even wanting to or feeling the need to participate in the American system, right?
Exactly.
And how a lot of folks want, how a lot of Black people in America who are descendants of chattel slavery, want to identify as African, right? But then there's this kind of not only just social conflict and barrier, but then there's also the geographic barrier, right? Yeah. And how colonization has geographically constructed the lands, right? And so what does it mean if I don't live on the continent that has been designated as Africa, but my ancestry, my DNA, my physical, so what does it mean to, like, I don't live on that land, but I'm of that land. And so, but whatever that's supposed to mean, because remember, at some point the continents were all connected. They were all together. And they split at some point. And so, like, really that's just a function, how we classify the global north, the global south, the global east, the global west. That's just all a function of our own ego. Ultimately, like, really what it actually is just a moving of tectonic plates. Right? That move these different land masses across this planet. Nothing more, nothing less. But we in our human consciousness and our ego come along and, like, want to put all kinds of and whatever that's supposed to mean. And it's fine in and of itself to have culture. That's not bad. But when it becomes like I'm using my culture to then weaponize and terrorize and traumatize other people, that's the problem, right? So if you want to have white culture, whatever it is, fine, have it. But the minute it starts to terrorize and traumatize and try and dictate and control the lives of other people outside of that culture, that's when it's a problem for me. Personally.
Exactly. And I that you really hit on something key, because that really has to do with, like, how Black Americans envision their, I guess, patriotism to this country and what that really means for them to, stand for the flag or to say this or that, which is it's difficult because you have this duality where it's like, okay,
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. We have this duality where it's like, oh, like, I don't want to stand for America because America has done this or that and this, but at the same time,
if I kneel in protest, now I get all this attention. But
exactly.
I get zero attention when I'm a patriot and doing what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly. But the funny thing is also that, when we identify America as, like, this thing that's done something to us as well, we actually also centralize America as being mainly white, which it isn't. And America isn't just something that's been done to us. We as Black people have been we are the foundation of America. And it's important for us to recognize ourselves as that, because, at the height of slavery around the 1830s, when you combine the combined value of all the railroads and all the factories in America put together, Black people were way more valuable than all of that combined. So when America says that they're proud of building this and building that, no, what you built was an economy off the backs of slavery. And what we have to recognize is that when we look at places like LA or New York or very, like, places Chicago. with a lot of wealth, when we look at these kind of pockets of wealth, we have to remember that those pockets of wealth actually derived from us. And so, what does it look like to be a Black American patriot, especially when you have these, conflicting issues with where history is told for America to be a white man's land and the white man's building, but in reality, it's actually built off us. And so, we have to kind of tackle that taboo. And I think that's hopefully what this podcast will do, looking at all these different taboos that, make us feel a little bit more like we belong.
Yeah.